Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the position that Boris Johnson finds himself in politically and discuss how secure he is and how that security is likely to change over the course of this year. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So last year, Keir Starmer put Boris Johnson under such pressure that leadership changes were openly being discussed amongst Conservatives. I didn't think at the time that they would get rid of him last year because they needed him to deliver Brexit. However, I did think that once he'd delivered the deal, or no deal, or whatever, but the damage was done either way, the party would want to replace him with someone who would be more credible for 2024. I did also note that another thing saving Johnson was the lack of an obvious replacement. Yes, I know people will talk about Rishi Sunak being favoured, but he has feet of clay. He's popular now because he's quite adept. He's a clever man. He's good at hiding himself away when the government are messing things up, and then just pops up now and then to say how much of our own money he's giving us. Isn't he great? Now, as Prime Minister, Johnson will have showed that hiding isn't a good look. He'll also not be able to hide behind spending. He'll be the focus for all government policies. And this Conservative government is going to be putting in a lot of unpopular policies before 2024. But I did say at the end of last year that I felt Johnson would be gone in 2021 and probably by summer. Not looking a terribly good prediction right now, is it? And it's certainly the case that Johnson looks way more secure than I expected to at this point. However, he has monsters ahead waiting to mug him. So let's go through them. So first of all, let's look at why he's currently so secure. Is it because such a blinding job has been done of Brexit? Behave yourself. You know, although I've been critical of one aspect of Starmer's attitude in 2021, and I have described it as taking the pressure off Johnson, he's not actually making as big a balls up as his detractors would have you believe. There are two universal political truths in play here. One, although the polls don't look great for Labour right now, they are actually better than at any time in modern history at this point in a parliamentary cycle. At this point where we are, no Labour opposition in my lifetime or for some years before has been doing this well. I know it doesn't sound like it's well when you're behind, but that's the way it goes. You don't, after a Conservative government have won a stonking majority, no Labour opposition has ever turned it around within a year or so. The second thing is what we have in the UK right now is classic rally round the leader. This is why desperate Conservative leaders of various countries throughout history have occasionally started the odd war. When a country is under attack, even if it's a perceived attack from an external threat, many people rally round their leader. Trump played on this with perceived threats, for example. Criticism of that leader is attacked as unpatriotic. We're all in this together, people will say. Coronavirus is an external threat to us all. This effect was of limited use to Johnson last year because he couldn't hide the impact of his cretinous policies. We're just going to let it pass through the population, he said. We now have the highest death toll in Europe. We're not going to see a second wave, we're over it now, they said, approximately 3 days before the second wave was undeniable. We're going to have a normal Christmas, he said, then had to tighten restrictions over Christmas at the last minute. Wall-to-wall disaster. But in 2021, thanks to the NHS's competent rollout of the vaccine and the fact that the government, against all the odds, have decided to let the NHS deliver the vaccine and not some private t-shirt salesman, he's looking good. People are looking forward to the lockdown being over. Nobody is asking, what is around the corner. People just have this attitude, the vaccine's been rolled out now, that's good. It looks like we're going to get everyone vaccinated by summer, that's fantastic. And then the restrictions will be over. And Boris Johnson said, as he eases the restrictions, we're never going back into them. That's brilliant, absolutely fantastic. You know, if the one part of our pandemic response that's going well was because we used the public NHS, why are we still pouring billions into useless private companies to deliver our test and trace? Nobody's asking that question, because that's the question people should be saying. We made a right balls up of it last year. At the moment, we don't seem to be making a balls of it. What's the difference? Is it because we used the NHS for this year? Is that the difference? No, not for the first time. People think they can see the light at the end of the tunnel and that's all they care about. Johnson is looking good. Nothing any opposition could do about this right now. The only thing Starmer can consistently bash the government over is Brexit, and he's been convinced that it would be a strategic mistake to do so right now. I disagree, but there it is. However, this rally round the leader cannot last for Johnson. And I don't mean, oh, these things have to pass at some point. We've got a timetable for it. So consider what happens later this year. I would suggest in autumn, which is a long way off, yes. But not that long a way off when you consider the parliamentary cycle. And that is what is paramount. Labour have to get themselves into a winning position for 2024. No value in peaking early, have to play the long game. This autumn, one of two things will happen. One, we'll get a third wave, or maybe even a fourth, because actually the chief scientific advisor, or was it the chief medical officer? Actually, it might have been Whitty this time. It might have been Professor Whitty saying this, suggesting that he expects a surge in cases as soon as we remove the restrictions. Now, I suppose technically that wouldn't be a third wave, because if we're still in the second wave, it's just another peak of the second wave. But, you know, in autumn, there's a very good chance we'll get a genuine third wave because of Johnson's constant refusal to follow scientific advice. It's probably not going to be a disaster before then, because the vaccinations will have been rolled out and the warmer weather will naturally mean fewer people indoors, which is where the bulk of the risk of transmission is greatest. But imagine a third wave hitting in autumn, just like it did last autumn. What then? People got through the first wave because of the promise of test and trace. Oh, it's nearly done, it's going to be fantastic, it'll sort it all out. Didn't. They got through the second wave because of the promise of the vaccination programme. Now, people may believe that. You know, if we don't get this surge, say, let's say, or if the surge is not what most people would regard as a surge, or the media play it down, and they can play it down, then again, but what if we get a third wave? What does Johnson then have to persuade us that he's still the man to get us through this? The popularity that he has stolen from the NHS's work will evaporate pretty quickly. But then there's a second possibility. Oh, well, let's say nothing happens, Phil. Let's say it's all fantastic. Okay, let's say that. By luck or by judgment, let us say that we managed to get on top of the pandemic in the UK and Boris Johnson has no other need to order lockdowns. We never have to tighten the restrictions. It's all plain sailing from here on in. Okay, what then? Then people will revert back to normal. They'll have forgotten the pandemic. They'll have forgotten what went well and what went badly. I wish they wouldn't forget what went badly. But they will start to revert to normal and ask a lot of awkward questions about, oh, what's going on with this levelling up programme then? What about this jobs creation? What about Brexit? And so on. There is no way an idiot like Johnson can win here. Either we get a third wave and it's like, you've failed us again. And how many more times are people going to let him fail and say he's got a brilliant plan? You know, it's like the end of the Italian Job, isn't it? I've got a cracking idea. Have you really? Or it all goes back to normal. I really don't think so, but let's say, in which case people revert back to the normal expectations of a government that are not there. Come autumn, he either shows himself to be a failure against this external threat, or the external threat is no longer perceived to be enough to rally around a crap leader. Now, going back to Rishi Sunak and his leadership ambitions, see, I read a piece in the Times, it's behind a paywall unfortunately, in which it claimed that a lot of MPs see Johnson as a Prime Minister for the long term and therefore Sunak's ambitions as part of a long-term plan. You know, and you read the bit of the article and there's one bit where you get the impression that some, I don't know how many, but some Conservative MPs are completely delusional. With the worst response to COVID in the developed world, a Brexit that's unravelling fast, and a government that's making enemies of our traditional allies, including in the United States, in order to save that precious Brexit? How on earth do they expect our economy to do better than expected? Because that was the phrase. Oh, you know, because they were pleased that there weren't the big tax rises in the budget, and they're thinking to themselves, according to the Times, if the economy does better than expected, we will never need those tax rises. That's what they're thinking. They're basing their strategy on the idea that our economy is going to take off. And you know, when you take that our economic outlook is bleak, really bleak, even a bit better than expected would still be a disaster. But at the moment, every time they try and remodel it, it's getting worse. That being said, unless there is a monumental cock-up from Johnson, I don't expect him to face serious consequences for his actions this side of autumn. That means, although I can see problems ahead that he cannot avoid, he will probably be fine until September, unless, as I say, he makes a right royal arse of it. That being the case, he certainly won't be gone by summer, and it's doubtful now that he'd be gone by the end of the year. So I'm probably going to have to scratch that one, because if he faces serious trouble in autumn, see, the thing is, to get rid of Johnson, 3 things need to happen. 1, Labour need to pull ahead in the polls. The Conservatives don't care they've got a crap leader. What they might care about is they lose their seat at the next election. As long as they can stay ahead of Labour, that's not likely. So if Labour do get ahead of the polls and stay ahead, it's no good just flipping up and then down again, stay ahead, and it doesn't need to be by much. The second thing that needs to happen is Johnson needs to lose personal popularity amongst the public. If it's just the Conservative polling that's down, pressure will be put on Johnson not to go, but to replace senior ministers, rather than resign himself. But if his personal popularity is suffering, that is a sign it's time to change the leader. And the third thing that has to happen is Conservative MPs have to be satisfied that this is a long-term problem. You know, they're not going to panic over a blip. So if nothing blows up in Johnson's face until autumn, it's doubtful that it will be considered a long-term issue until 2022. So he may be safe until then. But you can't really, well, I can't really see beyond then. And if somehow he is, then we are in real trouble, because by 2022, at that point in the parliamentary cycle, you don't need Labour to be well ahead, but you certainly need to be roundabout level pegging at that point. That being said, final point, in terms of the next election, remember that Labour do not need a big lead. Just as well, because we won't get one. Without winning Scotland, no chance of a secure Labour government forming. That's it. I mean, normally in previous general elections, other than the last one, I suppose, I'd hoped for a Labour government, or proper Labour government. But there is no path to winning without Scotland, and there's no path to winning Scotland in the next few years that I can see. But in a way, I'll take that, because if the focus shifts from secure Labour government to just get rid of the Conservatives, don't care what it's replaced with, nothing can be worse than this. Labour don't actually need a big lead. They need just ahead. Just ahead will do it. And although nothing is easy against a corrupt Tory government and tame media, it's not the mammoth task that many might imagine. When people sort of look at the task for Labour, if they try and picture what Labour need to form a stable government, they think, do you know how they're going to do it? They're not. But they don't need to do that. They just need to get rid of the Conservatives. Johnson won in 2019, not because he was credible, but because people thought he was more credible than Corbyn. Just perception. This is not what people think about Starmer. He also won on a promise to get Brexit done. This may come to bite him on the arse. Indeed, it should. But I do not expect this to be the case. I think we have a parliamentary Conservative Party full of new MPs who not only don't understand politics, but will panic when polls consistently tell them that they're going to lose their seat on the gravy train. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.